Hi,
Hi.
my name is Gwen Gunn, and I'm going to introduce our speaker for the evening, Margaret Gibson. Margaret has a long history with this group. She reminded me exactly the year that she first came to give us a workshop in 1982 at Pat Bullard's house.
Wow.
Yes, I see another one who was here. We all met, and she says that we were given red T-shirts that said "Published Poets" on them. That was fun, and she was very inspiring to us then, I remember. And I see that was the year that she won the Lamont selection given by the Academy of American Poets. She was already getting quite a name for herself. She's also won the Melvin Cain Award given by the Poetry Society of America in 1986-87, the National Book Award in Poetry Finalist in 1993, James Boatwright Prize 1986, 2 Pushcart Prizes, Who's Who in U.S. Writers, Editors and Poets 2001, Who's Who in U.S. Women Writers 2002, and International Authors and Writers Who's Who. So we have a very special person. She was a finalist in the Connecticut Center for the Book Award in Poetry 3 years at least, 2002, 2004, 2008. And she also was a finalist in the nonfiction area for her prose book, The Prodigal Daughter, in 2008. She's written 11 books of poetry. And tonight she will be reading from the final one, which is The Broken Cup, and she'll have that for sale for us afterwards as well. So, we're very happy to have such a distinguished person. She's been written about by many people. Brian Henry says of her work, hers is finely crafted lyricism and with attention to detail rare among poets today. And she herself says, writing poetry is an act of attention and receptivity. You study whatever it is that strikes your attention, whether a scarlet tanager, river, field, or forest, whether mother, daughter, alcoholic, photographer, lover. You take what's given into that part of the self that inquires, tests, embraces, and embodies. The outer and inner coalesce and fuse. And more recently she has said, we're here to find things that are broken and to mend them, to find where there is fracture or division, and to create a wholeness. And I believe that's what we're going to hear about tonight in her reading from The Broken Cup. Margaret? To all of you who read, and thanks to all of you who didn't, and we're here to hear, because we can't, it's important to have listeners. It's important to have people with the courage to speak. And I thank you all. Can you hear me in the back? I have a soft voice, but I can bring it up. When you get out to the book table, you'll find some flyers like this, called Being Present in a Fleeting World. And I and some others are having 5 retreat days in 2005, 3 of which have poetry workshops in them. So please take one, whether you're interested or you might know someone who is interested. They're filling up fast, so I just thought I would mention that. Oh my goodness. Okay. Broken Cup is a book of poems that I wrote about my husband David McCain and I traveling the way of Alzheimer's. My husband David got Alzheimer's, I was suspicious about it in 2006, but we started really noticing it in 2007. And I didn't write any poems, and I didn't start any new poems for about 2 years because of
because our life was being dramatically changed, slowly but irrevocably, and we were both getting our balance in very different ways. In some ways it shouldn't have been a surprise because David's mother and possibly his grandmother had Alzheimer's. I do want to say this, there's an inescapable sadness to the poems in this book because it has to do with Alzheimer's. But there's an arc in the book, and I hope that there will be an arc in the reading too, that you will bring you from that or through that sadness, or at least along with that sadness, into the discovery of some very positive things. There is always good in everything, and I discovered that, and I hope you will tonight too. David published in whatever it was, 1989, a book called Spellbound, Growing Up in God's Country. It was a memoir. Wonderful book. Won the AWP Prize for Memoir in that year. I'm going to begin the reading by reading a very, very short passage from the opening chapter of that book, because I want you to hear David's voice. Amid the loon-like cries of the bedridden, Beth and Miss Doubleday traipse up and down the long corridor of the Mystic Manor convalescent home in rumpled night clothes, my mother between them. A handsome woman, Beth is in her late 60s, about my mother's age. She wears scuffed brown Oxfords and a pleated Pendleton skirt under her nightgown. She has the husky voice of a woman who once enjoyed whiskey sours and cigarettes. She might have sailed at one time, or played tennis. Tall and graceful, Miss Doubleday must be close to 80. She holds the hem of her housecoat as though crossing a stage, her arm extended and bent slightly at the elbow, her wrist upturned. She is beautiful with the bones of a sparrow. My mother looks like a retired schoolmarm from the Allegheny Mountains. Without a permanent, her hair is combed straight back over her ears like an Indian, her face drawn and haggard like that of an old woman staring vacantly into a WPA camera, Appalachian Still Life, 1937, which is the year David was born. There is a sadness and strength in her face, lacking in the other women. The CAT scan shows a sinking of the cerebral cortex, a kind of saddleback in the middle of her brain. I call the declivity on the x-rays the valley of her life. She might enjoy that. The image puts her right up on the ridge outside Bradford, PA, surveying God's country. When I look at her, I think of myself. The odds are 1 out of 5 that one day I'll lose my mind as well. The odds are slightly better in Russian roulette. 1 out of 6. It's nearly a family tradition. Wearing only a housecoat, my mother's mother waltzed downtown in the moonlight to gather flowers, just as my mother did. I remember my mother crying when at 3 a.m. the police brought Grandma back. Tears for herself. She shook her head. In a few years, I'm going to be just like Grandma. You mark my words. Her words are marked, but most everything else she ever said or knew is filed away in the snarled circuitry of her brain, deep in the base of the nucleus of what doctors call the neurofibrillary tangle. It was David's mother's Alzheimer's that began his quest for memory, and thank God he wrote this book. He would, in his own passage through the beginning of Alzheimer's, he would sometimes sit on the sofa and read the book and look up at me and say, "Did this happen? It's really something." And even though you may have had it in the family, you never expect to get it. And denial is very strong in everyone. Because we do, don't we, want to live forever? Maybe. So I'm going to begin the reading of my poems from Broken Cup with a short poem called, it's the first poem in the book in section 2, called Heaven. which has to do with our desire for things not to change. Heaven. The leaves are turning one by one, carried away in the crisp wind. In one letter he penned, Coleridge turned away, calling love a local anguish he meant to leave behind him. Away, away, says the blue and gold day, and no one hears it but the wind, whose law it echoes. The dog has a red ball to chase. You pick a flat, perfect stone for the wall you hope to live long enough to rebuild. I prune briars, pick burrs from the dog's fur. I teach come and sit. Sit here, a longer sit beneath the cedars. The grass is freshly cut, sun low, all the energy of a summer's day rushing into bulb and root. The dog runs off, returns, the stones balance steeply. Good work, good dog. This is heaven. Sit, stay. This is a poem called Revising. David was once written about by a friend in a magazine article that I think was in Harper's called A Man Who Loved Things, which is part of the opening line. One of the things that used to drive me crazy in the early and middle stages was that David would start rearranging the paintings and an awful lot of other things in the house. The poem has to do with that, and my response to it. It goes, typical. It's called Revising. Now, this man who loves things, he's moving things from here to there in the house, but not randomly. No. He moves things to their rightful places, and he has a motive and a cue for action. For example, 2 paintings shifted from separate rooms where they've hung for years now share a common wall in the library where the setting sun strikes their gold leaf frames. Corn shocks in a field, a loaded hay wagon, a farmer with his pitchfork, now hung below an Anglican, formal, silk-knotted and embroidered rendering of an open coffin. The bare body, absent perspective, about to spill out of the box, but it doesn't, held in place, no doubt, by the upright bishops. Behold the man, they seem to say, behold the corn god who died for our sins. They're both about harvest, David insists. But can't we just let things be, I cry? Because too much is changing. Too much is forgotten, misplaced, because I want everything to stay where I left it, where I want it, where I know it, keeping vigil over our rife impermanence, because these things will live longer than we will, because he will forget their names and ours, because he will die and I will. Just tell me why you keep moving things, the words hardly out of my mouth, and I get it. The house is his poem. The poem is his life. He's revising, as I will this poem, hitching one sound to the next sound, shifting this image nearer that one, coupling. Just this moment in the dusty cupboard, he has juxtaposed the flawless Mesoamerican bowl and the Japanese bird whose beak I banged off by accident. His mother's teapot, restored, next to a bowl he bought right off the potluck table because he wanted the image of the Fisher King swinging his ankles, whistling in the quiet of his heart. Isn't it all about the heart? About appetite, accident, repair, and original paint? About rupture and relishing, wounded flesh, and the joy of returning home moment by moment, trying to know the place, and the two of us who live here, seeing into our true nature as if for the first time. There's a longer poem called Sentences, which is addressed to David, that begins the book. I don't read it first at readings because it's long and because it's a little philosophical, but it's first in the book for the reason that I want readers to understand that this is not about therapy for me or David grieving, but that Alzheimer's is an illness and it's terrible, and I'll advocate for it at the drop of a hat, so watch out. But there is a very strong philosophical and existential underpinning to all the poems, and it really doesn't matter in some ways that the subject is about Alzheimer's, because impermanence, suffering, and the lack of a fixed self are part of the whole deal. So this poem, Sentences, which is addressed to David, tries to establish something of that deeper undercurrent that underlies many of the poems that are sort of topical and focused right on the disease. So, Sentences to David. 1. I have a friend who thinks it's terrible there are no answers. He doesn't believe in God because God would be an answer one could know, and we don't know. I say he believes without knowing he believes. He scoffs at that, and I think to myself, the root of believe is to hold dear, therefore to live with caring. I admit I'm stretching the root, but my friend lives as if he's taken Pascal's wager. He paints stroke by stroke. He wagers. He creates a world. Theoretical physicists believe there are 6 flavors of quarks. Their names are up, down, strange, charm, bottom, and top. They believe this. They eat breakfast. They go for walks inside the landscape of an electron. But you, my beloved, who forget that you forget, and who make beautiful sense of the world, would dismiss such cogitations. You would focus on the sheer joy of one breath. This one breath. 2. If I identify with what stays, I am one thing. If what flows, if with what flows, another. I am a river in disguise. A river knows that place and once are not fathomed, plumbed, or tallied. When I stand at the edge of Main Brook and watch the snow melt sweeping around the prow of stone upright in the cascading torrents, I am of one mind. When I straighten up, having lifted and lightly balanced mossy stones to make a cairn, I am of one mind. When I bow before the tree whose roots slide over a shoulder of granite jutting out of the earth, whose roots hold the stone steady, flowing past it and embracing the stone, disappearing into the dark source that makes all words one, I am of no mind. Is it so terrible not to have answers? 3. I grant you it's terrible to lose one's mind. As burst of light by burst of light, the neurons misfire, unable to reach across synapse, making run-on sentences, eroded fragments, tangles. In the metaphor of eclipse, the mind is shadowed. No ricochet of radiant protons graces its surface. Where did you grow up? You ask me. My story, you knew it once. Yours too. Now you read your memoir more moved than when you wrote it. The story's fresh, immediate, your depth of feeling no longer held in check by intellect. You read the sentences, your lifelines, amazed. Is it in your DNA, perhaps, a coded sentence? You will, like your mother before you, be asked to let go of everything you hold dear. Our friend picks up his paintbrush. You put down your pen. Think of Sisyphus, condemned to accomplish nothing, sentenced to toil uphill to that resting place when the stone crests and settles, tilts and tumbles down. What is his mind at that moment? I keep wanting you to tell me what you remember, what you know and do not know as the stone rolls, as the river flows, as the root sinks deeper as is its way out of sight. Eclipsed, the moon goes dark, but the moon is still there, a deep presence held in place, disguised as an eddy in the river. These metaphors, I believe. Up, down, strange, charm, bottom, and top, hums the chorus in the background as Oedipus, that beautiful man, snow-haired in Colonus, says openly, all is well. And you, who were memory's scribe, this is what now you say. I have been lucky. I have been lucky all my life. And I honestly don't know whether that was a statement of denial or acceptance. I don't know. Alzheimer's is largely a disease of living without the why. We all think we know why things happen. I don't think so. I'm going to read you some poems that are a little bit more grounded now in some everyday nitty-gritty. Just forgetting basic things. This poem, Tasks, I noticed is on the flyer, the picture that's on the wall up there. And it carries an epigraph from a Sufi teacher, which is, the task of a human being is to transform suffering to joy. Isn't that great? That's very good. Tasks. And along the way, there's housework. Forget the computer, the checkbook, the inscrutable repair of whatever overheats or squeaks or ices over. Never mind the wooden lamppost, rotten, fallen on its face like a corpse in the wet grass, which needs to be cut. Your allotted jobs are to dust, fold the laundry, tasks in which you take such unsung pleasure I'm abashed. I'm sorting cutlery. I'm Job in a bathrobe, wondering where, oh where, in the wrong drawer you put it. And you'll make a good wife of you yet, I nearly joke. But look at you, so happy, I bite my tongue. This is a poem called Enactment. Have you ever had, I'm sure you all have, the experience of getting a little whisper in your mind that you wish later you'd listen to so that you didn't have to act it out in some other way? A bit of climbing vine copied in silver and cleverly linked. That was the tie that bound me, the cord about my wrist, the shackle. I couldn't work the catch, nor explain to you how to do it, although I tried. You went for pliers, the wrong tool. All the while, my voice a rising crescendo, my eyes wild, complaint and imprecation, and deep within me, an image of the gats, the self-immolation of pious widows, and I've been good. I don't deserve this. Why? And you standing by, wanting to help, you could only blame yourself. Incompetent. That's when I calmed down, and the bracelet snapped open and fell into the sink, into the abyss of yesterday's whisper, far back in the mind, barely audible, trapped. I don't try to spare myself in this because the book, I mean, couldn't write any poems from David's point of view because what's happening in the brain, of course, is a mystery. But I could write with a certain amount of reliability about what I was going through. And you do feel at times trapped and overwhelmed. It's a lot. His poem called It's a Lot, So You Lose It. So here's a poem called Losing It. Of course, David's really busy losing things, so that's where this poem, that's where we met, losing it. Okay. Losing it. What little I know, I hold more dear now that I take the daily reinvention of loss as my teacher. I'll never graduate from this college, whose MA translates Master of Absence with a subtext in the imperative, misplace anything. If there's anything I want, it's that more people I love join the search party. You are the one renowned among friends for your luck in retrieving from the wayside the perfect bowl for the kitchen, a hand-carved deer, a pencil-drawn portrait of a young girl whose brimming innocence still makes me ache. Now the daily litany of losses goes like this. Do you have your wallet, keys, glasses, gloves, giraffe? Oh dear, I forgot my giraffe. That's the preferred response, but no, it's usually the glasses, the gloves, the wallet, the keys I've hidden. And when I get frantic, when I've lost my composure, my nerve, my compassion, I have only what little I know to save me. Here's what I know. It's not absence I fear, but anonymity. I remember taking a deep breath, stopped in my tracks. I'd been looking for an important document I had myself misplaced, high and low, no luck yet. I was beside myself, so there may indeed have been my double running the search party. Stop, you said gently. I'll go get Margaret. She'll know where it is. But I'm Margaret, I gasped. No. You held out before me a copy of one of my books, pointing to the author's photograph. You know her, you said. We looked into each other's eyes a long time. The earth tilted on its axis, and what we were looking for, each other and ourselves, took the tilt, and we slid into each other's arms, holding on for dear life. Holding on. Here's another take on impermanence. It's titled Chanpleur, which is a French word, and the poem will tell you what it means. It's a compound noun. We don't have a word like this in English. Chanpleur. This morning, the little new is a word I speak haltingly, Chanpleur. Quick now, before it's lost in the swell of wind as the pines around our house billow and rain drills the roof. Say it, Chanpleur. Again, Chanpleur. Hear it, let it course down your face, Chanpleur. A compound noun that yokes song and the act of weeping. A noun is a verb that holds still, that settles in one place too long and casts a spell of apparent permanence. We think we're nouns, but really all I have to offer is Chanpleur, a word as impermanent as the touch of rain on my skin, a word minted by one who has heard the wordless song of the wind, by one who sings and hears within herself a blended sound, a diphthong for the lyric river pulsing in her wrist, a river wrested from what no one wants to hear. We're losing him. He's fading away. He's not himself. He's slipped through a rip in the mist. He's with us and not. With us and not. Chanpleur. Just look. He moves his hands like birds as he speaks. Every blessed word a winged migration. Flowing, flown chanteur. Nobody told me how long to read. I mean, so when you get tired, just say stop. I'm very compliant and obedient. I also have a certain measure of self-restraint, so hopefully you won't have to get to that point. Other people, of course, are in on the deal too, and unfortunately, I don't have a poem celebrating the generosity and compassion and just downright goodness of many friends who helped out. There are people who think they're helping out who say the most amazing things. That's what this poem is about. And listen to the imagery a little bit carefully too, because there's not a poem about sundowning, but it's in the imagery here. They're not some explicit things about Alzheimer's, but there's there. The poem is called Like Ice. What is it about some people? As I'm leaving his house after a convivial visit, my host, an old friend, stares at his shoes and mutters, "I can't see much good ahead." Is he Cassandra or yesterday's news? Which is a brand of kitty litter, by the way. Does he mean to be saying he'll help out or opt out? There's always good, I reply, meaning the sooner the better. However one defines or would embody the sublime, it would be better if it arrived pronto. Before David, intent on a mission he's forgotten, wanders off into the woods. Before he shivers to see daylight wane and an undefined darkness slur along the window glass. Before I'm so glad means I just do what I'm told. You think you have it bad, another friend quipped. Too quickly, then pulled herself up short, and you do. I don't recall what she said next. With practice, one can simply watch as an agony, like ice in warm liquid, dissolves without altering the level in the glass. Okay. And here's another friend, a different conversation. The poem is called What Is It? Our friend looks at me across the room, shifts in his chair. I think of you, both of you, he says. Nobody these days does anything that deprives oneself, that costs. He shifts again, looks away, clears his throat, brings to mind the marriage vows, he murmurs. In sickness and health, I ask, until death do us part, he concludes. Exactly. Point blank now. What's to keep you from leaving? Nothing. It's what he's feared and wants to hear. Nothing. He repeats the word. He's won. He nods. But, I add, I'd never do that. And the word we haven't said aloud says itself in the silent room. Love's so fragile, he comments, his voice low. Yes, also strong, yet wondering, what is this nothing that holds me, that holds us all? What is it? Okay. It's a poem called Bed. It's got there'll be some pauses to indicate small section breaks. bed. Well, we're not 16 anymore, I say softly. Funny you should say that. And you began talking memory as if we were in fact 16, mistaking me for some distant virginal mist rising off female skin like fog off a lake. I didn't know you then, I reply. I'm your wife now, remember? Happy also to be your mistress, if you'd like. We're laughing now, under the covers, your face near my thighs. You come up for air, a conspirator. Margaret likes that too. Making love takes longer. We make reservations as if for dinner out. Afternoons for delight, bed or sofa. Well, isn't the body a space-time event? Isn't it a river? Or the color of the ridge seen through winter woods at 4 when sun spills gold on it, then russet and purple, dun and dusk. Your skin, you murmur, soft, here, feel, so beautiful, it's so beautiful. Here and now, snow falling outside and we're warm inside each other. Have we ever done this before? I showed the poem to a friend and she said, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. You often don't. One of the things that I don't address directly, but is sort of implied in the next poem that I'm going to read, is one of the gifts to David and me of Alzheimer's. This is may not be the gift that Alzheimer's gives anyone else or everyone else, but it gave it to us. Whenever we had trouble in our marriage, it was usually because one or the other of us was over-idealizing the other person, and of course, you know, that doesn't work because the other person never comes up to it, and you never do either. And one of the things that has happened over the years of the illness, and David is still alive, I'll answer questions about that later, but is that the idealization has gone away. We love each other in our brokenness. We're both broken. And it is a much more whole way of being. And this is the poem Broken Cup. If acceptance and surrender are necessary for almost everything, but particularly this disease. Broken cup. And this is the cup in question. I've forgotten how it broke. The great cause or the petty cause that cracked the handle into 2 pieces and left me without a cup for morning coffee. In the cabinet there were others of white porcelain with steeply elegant lines, cups that matched their saucers. But my cup was Mexican, squat and round as Rivera's peasant bent before the wall of callas he carried on his back, his burden of blossoms. Hand-painted, my cup was carnival purple and yellow, flowers that honored earth, birth, death, geometry, symmetry, riot, good sex, good coffee, the sun rising hot. I banished it, broken, to my desk and used it for paper clips. Now I've rescued it, fit and glued the pieces back together. Still, I'm afraid to lift it, even to wash it by hand in hot water. It is that fragile. You brought the cup to me from Puerto Vallarta, that seaside trip you took to help your daughter past heartbreak, a little hotel by the sea with bougainvillea and a great deal on cocktails as the sun rolled its dying splendor onto the Pacific. I think I was jealous. I was jealous. I hoped you drank margaritas and missed me. Most likely Dos Equis with a squirt of lime. The cup gave me Mexico each morning on the cheap. I loved it. I loved it, it broke, I ignored it, I cast it aside. Sounds like a sitcom Bad Marriage. Sounds like the wary caregiver who reads the 36-hour day, heart empty. Who really wants to know about this despair? I have minimizing friends who tell me, It's not so bad, just a little accelerated forgetting, such as we all have these days. Oh, Ancient of Days, that was once a name for God, for something so deep within the self it's beyond us. Even so, it is possible, I want to tell them, to love what is broken. Possible, urgent, and necessary. And so for love of thee and me, I take my broken cup and set it down before me on a yellow placemat. I make toast with ginger jam and real butter, coffee whose beans have flourished on a mountain in Peru, I hope, near Machu Picchu. I sit down in my Japanese bathrobe and my Navajo beads with bare feet. I sit without ire or envy, without fear or despair, and drink and eat slowly. Very slowly, savoring all I can remember of that first night we met, the good talk, the dancing until we were too tired to do anything else but take the dancing to bed, the miracle of unintended meeting, the first of what was to be years of meeting, moments I hope to remember when I lie down to die, my beautiful love, your head of unruly hair and unruly thoughts unraveling into a silence that will lengthen or may break off as this handle did in 2 pieces. Who knows how love will hold, or if we will ever be all right? Who knows what wrong tastes like, or how much emptiness the cup will hold as we share it? Who knows? And if it is the cup of suffering, drink it down, or better, may it pass from you, and you live easy and go gently where you will, or where you must. I'll go with you, grateful for plum-colored flowers so close to bruising, coffee, sunlight, earth, the journeys we took together and the long one left us to walk until we lie down near clear water, shade trees, green pasture. In that place, there will be nothing unspoken, nothing forgotten or feared. Day or night, whatever the hour, it will be all shining, our whole and broken bodies full of light. Sorry. You know, we spend our whole lives, I think, most of us, constructing a self. And thinking it's that we're nouns and it's going to last. And it's not true, whatever. Alzheimer's is, as I've said, a crash course in impermanence. But one of the things that is still true of David is that there's a certain core that's very recognizably David. So something hasn't gone away. And the other thing is that, at least not to this point, the other thing is that it's amazing how watching David, I've already alluded to this, how he read his memoir with more feeling once his intellect was gone, and once all the complications and complexities that we allow into our life go, things become amazingly simple. Read this poem called Simple, which begins with a quote from the Sufi poet Rumi in Coleman Barks's translation. Simple. God's joy, wrote Rumi, moves from unmarked box to unmarked box. I remember my sister's husband, after her stroke, complaining, "Liz is a box. It says on the outside Liz, but she's not there, and she's not the Liz I married." Is she simple? Our daughter wondered, noting how the sheer weight of loss had rendered my sister speechless. But I have to confess, as I watch your memory fade, grief and the rest of it aside, I'm also curious. What is the self? What of the self, or the no self, outstays loss after loss? I watch the wind fill with leaves red and gold as the tree that was once a summery billow thins to an outline. A friend told of a woman he knew with dementia. "And who are you?" someone asked her pointedly, and she replied, "I watch." "How is it for you?" Our son got up his courage and asked you, hesitant, not wanting to offend. "I forget this and that," you replied, "but it doesn't bother me. I love Margaret and you and your sister. That's what I remember. It's that simple." Red and gold, the leaves dance in the air. The tree empties, the air shines. Love moves from unmarked box to unmarked box. Okay, I'm going to read, you all doing all right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really want to read this poem because it's got crocus in it and peepers and it's and Walt Whitman and a little sexy remark, but it's called Lucky Dark. An uprising, a rhapsody of clatter and renaissance as Stowe's Pond, our pond, pools and seeps come alive, I say, with earth music. Pickerels. They're frogs, actually. I don't know what's wrong, you say. I'm confused. I brought you outside for equinox so we can be like snakes or spotted turtles basking in the light, in love with the angle of the sun and its effects. Wake up, I tease. It's the vernal orchestra's suite for oboe and clitoris. You look across the pond's unshaded clarity, the bald sun's bold light, then stare at your hands. Why is this happening now? You murmur. I've forgotten. And I decide it's time for Whitman's eloquent attention to the grass, to the smallest sprout of it. All goes onward and outward, nothing collapses, something, something. Out of hopeful green stuff woven, needle by needle, single grass blades. See them prick through the bleached, matted tangles of winter grass at our feet. The beautiful uncut hair of graves. I don't remember the rest of it. But surely one can't forget the earth itself. Surely we are bound, if only for a moment's jubilee, to all this regeneration and return. Closeted behind bone, close to the primitive bark of your brain stem, there must be a colloquy of cells, pickerel cells, sweet bells jangled out of tune, on and off again, shrill. God of my memory, let me come back as a crocus, open to the sun, deaf and mute, so that in the steeply rising light I may sense only scent and gradual invitation, nearing sunrise and bloom without fanfare from my niche in the lucky dark. Ah, now, here it is. All goes outward and onward, nothing collapses. And to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. The last two lines, the best lines in the poem. All goes onward and outward, nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. So I'll read the last poem in the book, which is called A Good Death. May you die as did that good man William Blake, who, shortly before, broke into singing. Before that, called his wife an angel and drew not just her face, but her whole and spiritual body. Closer to it, he said he would forever be near to care for her. After that, and after the singing, he was still. Of course, when your good death comes, you'll have most likely lost the power of utterance. Not a word left to summon, not a scrap of whistled melody. No, you will have been for a time in deepest soliloquy, in an immense silence, immersed in whatever in us is powerful, ancient, free. But since the truth of the imagination for most of us needs to be embodied, may you also, while now there's time, practice dying before you die. May you daily stand outside time's rush, whose rivering is our natural light, and there on the steep lip of what we call darkness, call me angel, if angel I am, draw sunbursts in the rainlit air, sing your heart out. Great being, radiantly still and near. If anybody has a question, now's the time to ask it, if you'd like. I mean, I'll answer anything. So you can ask me anything, basically. And if there are no questions, we can. Any questions?
Is David home with you?
Not anymore. This was really what I didn't expect to happen. Because I've always had a lot of energy. But about 2 years ago, I weighed 110. I hadn't had a good night's sleep in 2 years. I was beginning not to be able to give David the quality of care he deserved because I was just, I'd gone through my energy. So he's now in a really wonderful residential facility called Chestnut Cottage in Westerly. It's part of the Elms. It's 25 minutes away, and I go see him every day. So I spend 2 hours or more with him every day. It takes a big chunk out of the day. But it's good for me, it's good for him, and he's happy. He's adjusted. It took a while, but I mean, it's a big jolt. As you could tell from the revising poem, he's or maybe from other work, he's really very earth-centered and loves beauty, and has put a lot of energy into making the house we live in the country, the house we live in. I know he misses that, but he feels loved, and that's the most important thing. All the books that I read, of all the books that I read in the beginning, it's really only one that I think made a huge difference for me, and I don't remember the title. It had joy in it or something, or miracle in the title, but it's basically said, create moments of joy. And it's such good advice for a caregiver because there's so much you can't, it's unstoppable, this disease, and it's unfathomable, and there's so much you can't do, and you can't understand it, but you can create moments of joy. And that is, that's it. That's a wonderful thing, yes.
So, you said you didn't write for 2 years.
I didn't.
And then, and I don't know how long we're talking about since, or you said 2007 you started to notice. So when did you start writing, when you were still a caretaker?
Yeah,
and then
caregiver. Yeah, I did, and I started showing, and I showed the poems to David, and so he, although he doesn't remember the book now, and actually when I gave it to him, I think it stirred up some memory of denial or pain, so I just took it away. I may give it to him another time, whatever. Oh, I have some good news. Let me interrupt myself. David's book, Spellbound, the memoir, is going to be reissued by the University of Georgia Press. I mean, it went through 2 paperback editions and then went out of print at the University of Pittsburgh, I don't know, some years ago. And I just heard from the University of Georgia Press that they've got all these great books on memoir books, and they want to bring David's out first. Oh. told David this. He said, that would be good. So one of the things not to, so anyway, I showed the poems to David, and he didn't, I mean, over the years, David and I critiqued each other's work, which was, believe me, something in a marriage you really have to learn how to do, without losing your cool or blowing it, and also to be honest, So, I mean, he didn't offer me critiquing of the poems when I showed them to him, but, he was affirming of them, and so that was my reception. And one of the things that I learned, for those of you that Peace, Virginia Woolf, is that you don't need a room of your own. I mean, I thought I did for years, right? But I mean, with Alzheimer's, I learned how to write poems when the TV was on. I learned to write poems when anything was going, I mean, whenever I could. Once they started up again, I couldn't be down, and my study was downstairs and in an away part of the house, and I couldn't be there. I needed to know where David was. Yeah.
Now, I too was interested in that 2-year period when you couldn't write, and then, but particularly if you could say anything about how the words came back. And
I don't know, maybe it's catching. I honestly don't remember. I honestly don't. I mean, I know that during those periods I was doing some revision for the book before this, what's it called, Second Nature. So I was fooling around with stuff, but that book was pretty much already done, and down at LSU. So I didn't have much to do. But during that period, I mean, I'd been aware when we were in Greece together in 2006 that things were not quite the same with David. I couldn't put my finger on it, but then it began to show up really kind of clearly in 2007. And I'd seen his mother, and I'd seen other people, and he had too, and it's a huge shock, especially someone who was like David, funny and intelligent and omnicompetent, and really carried his share of the house as well as the relationship, and was really involved. And suddenly he couldn't be. I mean, and it was surprising to him too. It was surprising to me to find the checkbook was a mess. It was surprising to me to try to figure out which tool to use or not, because he couldn't remember the names of tools anymore. He couldn't remember what they did. So there was a long period of both existential shock and practical shock. I mean, you're just overwhelmed with all of what's going to happen. What is happening, not what's going to happen. The thing that has really been essential for me has been what I've learned in meditation practice over years and years and years, which is past is gone, present hasn't happened yet, all you've got is right now, which is a huge, big gift, what we have right now. So rather than bemoan, I mean, I've known that there are people who talk with people who can't get out of their minds what he was like or she was like, or can't face what's going to happen even though you don't quite know what's going to happen. I mean, there's a generic, but not everybody's angry. Everybody gets Alzheimer's in their own particular way. But it's just a lot to take on and to understand and to live with. And I don't know why I didn't write. I was stunned, I think. Even though I knew it was coming, even though I could see it coming. And David, who had always been honest about everything, was in such denial. And that was really, really hard to deal with. I had to learn how to talk to him in a different way. I couldn't use the A word. All sorts of things. And when someone who's been brilliant can't remember how to get to your neighbor, or to a friend's house that's 5 minutes away, or to the fish store that we've been going to forever, etc. Everything. So, I mean, it's a daily there's surprises all the time. And after a while, you begin to get your feet under you again and understand what to do, and then you don't. I mean, I still don't know what to expect. Every day when I go to see him, it's different. And some days are just wonderful, and other days he's a little sleepy. He now talks word salad, which has been getting more and more tossed, so that it's. But I mean, in terms of a kind of emotional groundedness when the two of us together, there are a lot of ways to communicate. I hate to tell you this, poets, but there are a lot of ways to communicate that are nonverbal, and that's a lot of the way we are with each other is nonverbal now, which is really kind of wonderful. And a real big lesson for me. It's always been so cerebral and dependent on words, and you have to say it before I get it. Now I have to get it. Any way I can get it, I have to get it, because it isn't going to be verbal. So it's I hope, I don't know whether I answered your question.
No, very well.
I guess I did.